case we have never met, I'm Michael Price, and I want to help you succeed in growing your business.
Welcome, I'm Michael Price, your host.
And I'm Nancy, your co-host.
Welcome to this deep dive. If you want to see the future of how the largest buyer in the entire world handles the absolute explosion of artificial intelligence, and massive data tracking.
You mean the U.S. federal government, of course.
Right, exactly, the U.S. federal government. If you want to see how they are handling all of this, you really don't need a crystal ball.
No, you definitely don't.
You just need to look at their shopping rules. So today, we are going straight into the weeds of federal procurement. And for you listening, whether you sell to the government or not, those weeds are where the most consequential market shifts are actually hiding.
Yeah, that's where the real action is.
It is. So our mission today is unpacking a really major upcoming disruption, which is the General Services Administration's MAS Refresh 31.
And I think it's worth noting that this disruption is moving way faster than anyone really anticipated.
Oh, no, absolutely.
We are looking at a stack of internal notes and an official advance notice that came straight from the government's Interact portal in early March 2026.
Yeah.
And they paint a picture of just a massive regulatory overhaul. This isn't just, administrative housekeeping. It is a fundamental rewiring of how the government acquires technology and how it tracks every single dollar it spends.
And the timing on this is what makes it so critical. Just to set the scene for you, today is March 8th, 2026. The government dropped these draft AI procurement rules onto the portal just 2 days ago on March 6th.
Right.
So that means there is a very real ticking clock for contractors right now. To help navigate the practical realities of this, I'm joined by our resident expert. You are my go-to guide for translating basically impenetrable government acquisition speak into actual business impact.
Happy to be here. And yeah, impenetrable is definitely the right word for it.
Because, let's face it, understanding procurement regulations requires reading between the lines of some very dense material.
The language is undeniably dry, but the implications, they hit a company's bottom line almost immediately. And the overarching theme you really need to understand right out of the gate here is control.
Control, okay.
Yeah. The government is realizing that buying modern technology, specifically artificial intelligence, it requires unprecedented oversight. They're using MAS Refresh 31 to force the entire market into a highly structured, hyper-transparent box.
Okay, let's unpack this because we need to start with the most urgent part of the advance notice.
The AI terms.
Right, the Federal Acquisition Service is introducing completely new government terms and conditions for AI systems, and this all stems from an Office of Management and Budget Directive, which is OMB Memorandum M2522.
Also known as Driving Efficient Acquisition of Artificial Intelligence in Government.
Yes, that's the one. Help me understand the scoop of this, because looking at the source documents, it really doesn't seem like they are leaving much wiggle room.
What's fascinating here is that the government isn't just deciding what AI they want to buy. They are unilaterally establishing the guardrails for how that AI must operate, how it has to report, and how it must be governed if it touches federal infrastructure. And that OMB Memorandum M2522 serves as the regulatory bedrock for this entire Refresh 31. It applies to any AI systems or services offered under the Multiple Award Schedule, the MAS.
Which is essentially the massive catalog federal agencies use to buy commercial products.
Exactly.
And the detail that just jumps right off the page is the absolute lack of exclusions.
Not at all.
There is no loophole for light AI. There's no carve-out for a simple back-end machine learning tool. If a vendor is offering an AI system or service, it is covered. It's mandatory across the board.
Yeah, if it's AI, you are in the net.
But what really shocked me is the timeline. The draft drops on March 6, 2026, right? And the feedback window for the entire industry to review these terms and submit comments slams shut on March 20th. 14 days. Is it just me, or is that completely unprecedented for a shift of this magnitude? How is the industry supposed to actually digest that?
It's practically a blink in the world of federal contracting. 14 days means legal departments, compliance officers, and product engineers at every major tech company have to just drop everything.
They must be panicking.
They are. They have to analyze these new terms and conditions and determine if their current AI architecture can even meet the government's baseline. It forces rapid engagement, and frankly, it leaves zero room for industry lobbying to water down the requirements.
They're just pushing it through.
Exactly. The government is signaling that they are setting the rules right now, and the market simply has to catch up.
And catching up is not going to be optional once Refresh 31 is officially issued.
which the internal notes target for March or April of 2026.
Right, March or April. Existing contractors will have to accept what they call a mass modification, and this isn't a friendly suggestion. They have exactly 60 days from the date that modification is issued to accept the updated terms.
It's a hard deadline.
So, what happens to a contractor if they look at these new AI guardrails and realize their product just doesn't comply within that 60-day window?
They are effectively shut out of the federal marketplace.
Just like that.
Just like that. If you don't accept the MAS modification, your catalog gets suppressed. Agencies can no longer buy from you through the schedule. It's a massive flex of federal buying power.
Yeah, they hold all the cards.
They really do. The government is ensuring that any vendor playing in their sandbox is perfectly aligned with OMB M2522. It is a rapid, mandatory synchronization of the entire supply chain. You either adapt your AI governance to meet their standards within 2 months, or you walk away from the largest client on Earth.
Which perfectly sets up the second massive shift in Refresh 31. We just talked about what the government is buying and how they're putting guardrails around it. Now let's transition to how they are tracking those purchases.
The data mandate.
Right, because this next mandate might actually be more disruptive to the daily operations of a federal contractor than the AI rules themselves.
Yeah.
I am talking about the expansion of Transactional Data Reporting, or TDR.
This is a monumental shift in procurement data management.
Yeah.
For years, TDR has been operating as a voluntary pilot program for certain subsets of the schedule. Vendors could opt in if they wanted to, but MAS Refresh 31 changes the game entirely. The program is moving from a voluntary pilot to a mandatory requirement for all special item numbers, or SINs.
And just to put this TDR shift into perspective for anyone listening who manages compliance out there, this isn't just tweaking your discount disclosures.
Not at all.
Under the Legacy Commercial Sales Practice, or CSP, you were essentially defending your pricing floor based on broad commercial catalog discounts. Like, you were showing the government at a high level that they were getting a fair deal compared to your other corporate clients.
Right? It was an estimate, basically.
Yeah, it's an estimate. It's kind of like moving from a broad end-of-year estimate of your expenses to having to provide a detailed, itemized receipt for every single cup of coffee you buy every single month.
That is a perfect analogy.
Because with TDR, the government is demanding line item telemetry down to the specific part number, the exact quantity, and the exact price paid on every single invoice. And it has to be submitted in a standardized format every 30 days.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the administrative burden of that cannot be overstated. Existing contractors who have spent years, sometimes decades, operating under the legacy CSP are going to have to completely overhaul their internal compliance engines.
Because it's mandatory now.
Yes. The advance notice clearly notes that GSA is expanding TDR to the remaining 112 services SINs. By making this mandatory across every single category, the government is building an unprecedented standardized database of pricing and purchasing behavior.
They're essentially creating the ultimate internal price comparison engine. Like if an agency in California buys a specific cloud service, and then an agency in New York buys that exact same service a week later, the government will have granular line item data to immediately flag if they are paying different prices.
And achieving that level of visibility requires contractors to invest heavily in their own software and infrastructure. You can't manage monthly line item reporting on thousands of federal transactions with a spreadsheet.
Definitely not.
You need automated systems that pull invoice data, format it to GSA's exact specifications, and upload it through their portal flawlessly every single month. That costs real money to build and maintain.
And just like the AI terms, existing contractors will be required to accept a mass modification to incorporate these TDR changes into their contracts, again, within that strict 60-day window.
The clock is ticking on multiple fronts.
It really is, and there is also some immediate actionable advice hidden in the GSA's latest bulletin for anyone who is currently prepping a proposal to get onto the schedule.
Yeah, the transition warning.
Right. The mandate applies to new offers submitted after Refresh 31, but the sources show GSA strongly recommends that any non-TDR offers that haven't been submitted yet should transition to the TDR format immediately.
Yeah.
So if you are a company finalizing proposal right now under the old legacy rules, you're essentially setting yourself up for failure, right?
Without a doubt. The grace period is officially over. The pilot is finished. Total data transparency is now the baseline cost of entry for federal contracting. If a company submits a legacy offer today, it will likely just get kicked back or delayed until they reformat it for TDR anyway. All new offers post-Refresh 31 will require it. Contractors need to pivot their entire strategy right now before Refresh 31 even drops.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because buried in this MAS Refresh 71 notice, underneath the massive headlines about AI governance and mandatory TDR, there are a series of highly specific policy changes creating immediate ripple effects across completely different industries.
Yeah, some of the smaller details.
Those are fascinating.
Let's rapid fire through some of the most surprising structural shifts we found in the sources. First up, the Startup Springboard.
The Startup Springboard is a program originally designed to help highly innovative companies get onto the GSA schedule faster.
Because usually you need, 2 years of experience?
Exactly. Normally, you need 2 years of corporate experience to even apply for a schedule contract, which obviously shuts out a lot of cutting-edge startups. The Springboard was meant to bypass that, but Refresh 31 is putting a strict bottleneck on it.
Right.
Moving forward, the program will be strictly limited to offerers who meet the specific qualifications of Fastlane.
And looking at the actual source material, this is causing genuine real-world anxiety. In the comments section on the GSA Interact portal, you can see businesses reacting in real time.
It's pure panic for some of them.
Yeah. You have a user named Pascal openly asking if this limitation is going to completely prevent newly formed all small businesses from utilizing the Springboard. And another user, Carol, is actively stressing out, asking if the program is still available to all offerers right now before Refresh 31 drops, or if the announcement itself is the effective cutoff date.
And their panic is completely justified. When the government tightens a valve on a fast-track program like this, it disrupts funding runways. Imagine a startup that was formed a year ago specifically to build an AI tool for federal agencies.
They don't have the 2 years of experience yet.
Right? They built their entire go-to-market strategy and probably pitched their venture capitalists on the premise that they could use the Startup Springboard to land a federal contract this year. Now, they're suddenly staring at a regulatory wall.
And the government's response on the portal is essentially, we'll collect feedback and address it in an upcoming webinar, which does absolutely nothing to soothe the immediate panic of a startup trying to submit an offer today.
No, it doesn't.
But that brings us to the next massive ripple effect, which targets how established contractors package their services, the RFO, or revolutionary FI overhaul. What does this actually mean for a vendor trying to sell a complex solution?
The RFO is a direct strike against how contractors used to construct their offerings. Historically, contractors had broad discretion to add what were called open market items onto their MAS orders.
Okay.
If a government buyer needed a comprehensive IT solution, the contractor could easily bundle in related hardware or services that weren't strictly approved on their core schedule contract just to make the deal work smoothly.
So it sounds like it was a bit of a Wild West, which explains why the government couldn't track pricing effectively. If you have unvetted items sneaking onto official orders, your data is compromised.
Exactly.
So how does the RFO fix that?
By completely killing that open market Wild West. The advance notice explicitly states that this broad discretion has been replaced. Contractors must now use the order level materials, or OLM, SN.
Right, the OLM SIN approach. And the notes say that's based on GSR 538.71 and 538.72, which, translating that regulation into plain business English, basically means you can't just toss extra items into the shopping cart anymore. The government is forcing a highly structured separate line item process for anything that isn't strictly on your core contract. The rules are tightening to an incredible degree.
It is entirely about control and compliance. The government wants absolute clarity on what they are buying. If an item isn't on your schedule, you can't just slide it in. You have to follow the OLM structure, which has its own strict pricing and vetting rules.
That's a huge shift.
It is. In fact, GSA strongly recommends that current MAS contractors who don't have the OLM SIN on their contract should accept the mass modification to add it. Because if you don't add it, your ability to provide complete turnkey solutions to agencies is severely crippled.
Okay, before we wrap up, we have to talk about the oddities, because anyone who reads procurement regulations knows they occasionally offer a glimpse into some truly bizarre backstories.
Oh, absolutely.
Right in the middle of all these incredibly dense updates about AI, guardrails, and transactional data reporting, there's a very specific rule update regarding the firearms and ammunition category.
Yes. The language in each large category attachment is being formally updated to explicitly exclude foreign replica weapons and inert ordnance from the scope of the MAS program.
You just have to wonder about the series of events that necessitated that rule.
Someone definitely tried it.
Somebody, somewhere, somehow tried to sell the federal government a foreign replica bazooka or maybe a crate of inert display grenades through a standard commercial purchasing schedule designed for office supplies and IT equipment. And it caused enough of an administrative headache that GSA had to officially write a rule to ban it.
It's the golden rule of regulatory compliance. Every oddly specific rule exists because somebody somewhere tried to do it. The fact that the GSA had to expend resources to explicitly clarify that fake foreign replica weapons are out of scope is a perfect example of how bizarre federal contracting gets.
It really is. A formal regulation that essentially translates to, please stop trying to sell us fake weapons.
Exactly.
But speaking of different categories, Refresh 31 touches almost every corner of the market. The draft mentions revisions to printing solutions, specifically expanding the scope of 3D printing under SIN 3332493D.
And it goes far beyond printing. It revises the description and instructions for automated contact center solutions, adjusting to how customer service AI is evolving.
Makes sense.
We're also seeing significant updates to the human capital category, particularly around separation and retirement, employee performance management, and talent acquisition.
And there are significant changes to the training requirements as well. They are revising the descriptions for Defense Acquisition Workforce Improvement Act, DIA, and the Federal Acquisition Certification in Contracting, FACC.
Right, the training standards.
Which, for you listening, are the actual certifications for federal buyers. This makes complete sense. If you're entirely overhauling how the government buys things, mandating AI terms and requiring line-item data reporting, you have to update the training for the acquisition workforce personnel who are actually responsible for enforcing all these new rules.
That is the crucial final piece of the puzzle. The government isn't just changing the rules for the vendors. They are retraining their own workforce to scrutinize those vendors under these new paradigms. Refresh 31 leaves almost no stone unturned.
So what does this all mean? If we step back and look at the entirety of MS Refresh 31, based on the sources we've gone through today, it is clear that we are looking at a massive turning point.
Without a doubt,
the federal marketplace is demanding total compliance, absolute transparency, and they are demanding it right now.
The narrative is undeniable. The era of relaxed commercial sales practices and unregulated technology acquisition is officially ending. Whether it's the mandatory integration of OMB M2522 to put strict governance around artificial intelligence, or the universal mandate of transactional data reporting to create absolute transparency into pricing, the government is taking firm control.
And they are enforcing this with a ruthlessly strict 60-day window for contractors to accept these mass modifications once Refresh 31 is issued this spring.
Targeting March or April 2026.
Right. And for you listening, even if your company never plans to sell a single piece of software directly to the government, you should care deeply about this shift.
It affects everyone.
It really does, because the federal government is the largest buyer on earth. Their buying habits, their data standards, their compliance requirements, they inevitably trickle down and shape the broader tech and business landscape. When the U.S. government demands a certain level of data reporting, major software companies build new tools to provide it, and within a few years, those tools just become the standard for private industry as well.
This raises an important question, one that extends far beyond GSA schedules and the immediate panic of federal contractors.
What's that?
If the federal government is using its immense purchasing power to force these highly specific mandatory AI terms and conditions onto every single company that wants a piece of the massive federal budget, will these government rules accidentally become the universal standard for how AI is governed, developed, and sold in the private sector as well?
That is such a good point.
When the biggest client in the room demands the product be built and governed a certain way, it often becomes far too expensive and complicated for companies to maintain a separate, less regulated version of their AI for everyone else.
That is a fascinating and massive point to leave you with. Are we witnessing the birth of de facto global AI regulation quietly hidden inside a 60-day federal purchasing update? We will leave you to ponder that thought. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the underlying forces moving our markets. And we will catch you next time as we continue to unpack the ideas shaping our world.
A special thank you to MarketUS.com for furnishing us this information. You can reach them at MarketUS.com or call them at 954-636-3232. Before we go, this deep dive was created by the MarketUS.com team. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. It's right below the subscribe link.